The Utah Utes got their season off to a spectacular start against the UCLA Bruins, but Kyle Whittingham still believes there's areas of improvement. How does Coach Whitt feel about this team? And what else does Utah need to fix in order to be the best team in the Big 12? We're breaking it down on today's Locked On Utes.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen and view of the day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. If it's your first time joining this show, make sure you like and subscribe. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Football season is around the corner. You can visit FanDuel app today and start planning your future bets. Football is here because this was absolutely spectacular. I mean, what a performance by the Utah Utes. Still cannot get over the absolute thrashing of the Bruins that took place on Saturday, 43-10. That's right. A Utah offense against a P4 team put up over 40 points. You love to see it. Been a little bit since that happened. And Utah getting ready to take on Cal Poly this week. We'll talk about that more. But on today's show, I want to talk about Kyle Whittingham's comments, how Utah can improve their tackling, and also want to discuss if Utah's now a top three, maybe even the best team in the Big 12 at the very end of the show. But first, talking about Kyle Whittingham's comments, one thing I thought Kyle Whittingham did mention that's very interesting is like, hey, the Utah offense was spectacular, but there are still areas we can grow at and get better. And one of the things he mentioned was we need to get Tobias Merriweather more involved. And I totally agree. Utah did not need Tobias to be spectacular in this game, right? He would have had two catches. He had one catch for 36 yards that came late in the game. Dampier rolled out to his right, launched it downfield, and Merriweather came up top and made a grab. Should have had two catches because there was another situation where Dampier rolled out to the right, rifled it downfield to him. What happened? UCLA DB grabbed on, and it was a flag, and Utah, from that point, basically was able to get a first down. But those were really the only two times in the game Tobias Merriweather actually ended up being targeted. So he had the one catch for 36 yards, should have been two, as we mentioned. But this is a guy who has wide receiver one potential for Utah. Yes, Smith Snowden, who we are going to talk about on tomorrow's show, so you don't want to miss that. Yes, Smith Snowden led Utah in receiving yards, right? 6 catches for 51 yards. But he averaged 8.5 yards per carry. Tobias Merriweather, had he completed his two catches, would have averaged about 20 to 30 yards per reception. Merriweather is more of your traditional wide receiver one. Smith Snowden has clearly showed a lot of promise to Utah, but I still think Smith Snowden's best attribute is his ability to make guys miss in the open field, not as much his route running. So I am curious to see as teams do different things to try and key in on Smith Snowden, how that's going to work for the rest of his season. I think Smith's still going to be effective. He's still going to make plays, but I don't know if the way Smith was continuing to win is as surefire of a way to win against a better defenses, because let's call it what it is. Utah was very good, but they were also playing a not very good UCLA team. That's pretty clear based on how the Bruins performed, that they are not going to be among the best in the Big Ten. But Tobias Merriweather's way of winning downfield with his size, remember, 6'5", 200 pounds, that catch radius, that is a reliable way to win. And that's a way that that's a guy Utah needs to continue to get involved. So I totally agree with Kyle Whittingham. The offense looked spectacular, right? I mean, he said as much, right? Got a lot of good things offensively in his press conference yesterday. They ran the ball well, threw it efficiently, didn't turn it over, didn't really have any lulls on offense, which you love to see. But there are still areas and things you can improve on, especially when the competition is going to improve. Honestly, what I think will be tenfold by the time we get to Texas Tech. Like Cal Poly, Wyoming, tune-up games. I mean, even Wyoming. Like, I love the Akron Zips, but like, if you're Wyoming and you're playing Akron close, Akron normally not one of the best P4 team, not one of the best group of 5 teams, that does not bode well for when Utah is going to head up there in a few weeks. So feeling good about Utah going up there right now. I'd be shocked if Utah wasn't 3-0 facing off against Texas Tech. And we'll get to talk about that Texas Tech game here soon, but really, really excited for that. But continue to talk about Kyle Whittingham's press conference. Joe Coles of the Deseret News was the one who is going to provide some of these updates for us too. He said he thought the defense played well on third down. Success for the game started at the line of scrimmage. Need to work on tackling. We'll talk about the tackling more in the second segment, but I do just want to give the defense a ton of credit. I had major questions about Utah's defensive line coming into this game. They lost 5 key contributors for last season, in some ways 5 of their top guys. Like Logan Vano played a lot, but honestly, I thought a lot of last season, Connor O'Toole and Van Fillinger were Utah's best 2 defensive ends. Best 2 defensive tackles last year were Junior Tafuna, Keanu Tanavasa. All of them were gone. This doesn't happen very much where you lose all of them, especially guys like Tafuna and Fillinger. They've been here forever. But credit Coach Powell, Luther Ellis. Those guys did a miraculous job the Utah staff as well, I'll give them credit, right? John Henry Daly, Logan Fano were not originally Utah commits. They were at BYU. Utah was able to present themselves as a great option, and those guys came over. And John Henry Daly and Logan Fano were two of Utah's highest graded defenders, highest graded players in this game, according to Pro Football Focus. Like, they were absolute game wreckers here. And the defensive line, whether it was Vaimahi, Vakalahi, which we'll have to talk about Dallas in a moment, since he did apparently get hurt, and Utah's going to be without him for the foreseeable future. That's a big loss. But Laea, Kafusi, the defensive tackle room did their job. They ate up the double teams. They allowed UCLA no run game. The Bruins' best run game by far, Bruins' best offense by far, was Nico running the ball. And that's a huge credit to this defensive line. So major kudos to this defensive line for how they played, because they were absolutely remarkable too. Kyle Whittingham said on Lander Barton playing both ways, he said, I'm convinced he could be one of the best tight ends in the country if that was his full-time position. Maybe. I will say, like I talked about on the live show the other day, as Lander was fine on offense, right? He caught the one catch. It was a touchdown. Great. It was awesome. I was so impressed with Dallin Bentley. I thought Dallin Bentley made a major leap in this game, just showed major growth from last. It's a guy who was at Snow College a few years ago and slowly but surely working to grow and improve. He had 5 catches for 31 yards and a touchdown, averaged 6.5 yards per carry. He started the game for this Utah team, was physical in the run game as a blocker. I love what Dallin Bentley showed for this Utah team. I do not think Utah has a superstar at tight end like Brant Keithy, like Dalton Kincaid. I think they have a really good tight end, and still one of the ones who will probably be up there in the Big 12 because he clearly had the trust. Bentley made a couple of catches under duress too. I was really encouraged by the progress that he was able to show too. So really loved what he was able to do. Love what the running backs were able to do. Kyle Whittingham said Parker and Rogers are 1A, 1B. They both blocked well. We talked about it on the live show. Love that they started with Wayshawn throwing that big block for Smith Snowden on the outside. Really liked what the 1-2 backfield punch showed. I still would like 60-40 Parker in favor of Rogers, but Rogers is really good, and Wayshawn did have the one fumble, but I think Wayshawn's just a little more explosive, although really like what Naquari Rogers showed too. And, you know, running backs are positioned, though, those guys can get worn down pretty easily. So I do want Utah to continue to utilize that dual backfield, even if I want a little more Wayshawn, because you still need an effective number 2 back to preserve your guy and prevent injuries too. He also, Kyle Whittingham said they got the good pressure with 4. That was something we talked about that Utah did a good job of. He praised the play of Blake Cotton and Scooby Davis at corner. Blake Cotton in particular, oh my gosh. I mean, or excuse me, Elijah Davis in particular. How many times did his name even get called in the broadcast? Because they weren't targeting him. Like, he was absolutely tremendous that way. He was locked down. They were barely ever throwing his way. He did a miraculous job in the secondary. Blake Cotton, I thought, got picked on a few times, but also just say, as I talked about earlier, Utah makes life so hard on their corners with how much zero blitzing. I mean, just bring everyone, and it's just those guys out there on a corner, on an island all by themselves. So that's very hard to have to defend that much grass, knowing you got maybe one safety, and sometimes if you miss the tackle and miss the play, going to give up a touchdown. So yeah, I thought Blake had a very good debut overall. I thought he was just put in some tough positions, so he did get picked on at times, but overall was very good. And the last thing Kyle Whittingham said I thought that was worth of note is just that he's, just really impressed with the direction this team is in and wants to continue building moving forward and feels strongly about that. So, yeah, I think it's really exciting what this Utah team has been able to do so far. But there was one thing that was not exciting. It was Utah's poor tackling. Utah struggled to tackle against UCLA. How much of a concern is that moving forward for the rest of the season? We're going to discuss it in a moment. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at Supply House. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. Need parts fast for a project? Supply House has next-day delivery. Talk about a game changer. The part finder tools and 3D schematics can save your house on jobs where every detail matters. Their Trademaster perks like priority shipping and dedicated support make the whole process smoother as well. You can join the free Trademaster program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lowest price, and dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use the promo code SHCollegeE5 for 5% off your order. Once again, that's at SHCOLLEGE5 for 5% off your first order at supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service when you head over to Supply House today. Today's show is also at the Locked On Podcast Network, brought to you by our friends at Rouge Eats. Guys, you've probably heard of Viagra or Cialis. Maybe you even tried them, but if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Ruji Ready. Ruji Ready is a next-gen prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and boost blood flow. Unlike the usual pills that can take hours, Ruji's 3-in-1 formula dissolves under your tongue and kicks in fast. On average, in 15 minutes, effects can last up to 36 hours, so you can stay confident and in control when the moment is right. If the traditional options haven't worked for you, Ruji might be the answer. Over 150,000 men have already made the switch. You can even read real customer reviews on their site. It's helping a lot of people feel more confident and present in the moment. You can head to rugi.com/lockedoncollege, all caps, no spaces, and use code lockedoncollege, all caps, no spaces, to get 15% off today. That's rugiet.com/lockedoncollege, and use the promo code lockedoncollege for 15% off at rugi.com. If you're Ruji ready, head over to rugi.com today. The Utah defense was spectacular. Only 13 points for UCLA. Nico had a brutal day, right? I mean, he had under 150 yards passing. UCLA's offense was barely over 200 yards. That's a tremendous day. Utah shut out UCLA in the first and fourth quarter, only allowing 10 points combined in the second and third. But there was one nitpick, and it could become a mass. It's not even a nitpick. There was one issue. It wasn't an issue in this game, but it can become a massive issue that costs Utah in future games. And that was the tackling. Utah missed several tackles. And Kyle Whittingham did say, hey, we didn't tackle as much during spring ball. So, during fall camp, because try to keep guys healthy. Obviously, Utah's just had a ton of injuries over the course of the year. So he said he didn't want to tackle as much, wanted to keep guys healthy. So he said maybe that had a bit to do with the missed tackles. And I do think that's part of the reason. I think it's the first game back, getting the flow in. I think some of these guys as well, just calling it what it is. I think Rabbit Evans is probably a starter on this team. We heard Rabbit Evans was out. So one of the reasons Rabbit's probably playing over, Nate Ritchie, Jackson Benny, even though I'm sure those guys will still have a role. But a lot of times that will be Rabbit Evans, because Rabbit showed us last year he is a really strong tackler. That Iowa State game was spectacular. So do expect the tackling to improve. It was a little disappointing to see Teo Johnson struggle with the tackling, just because that was kind of the one thing that he wasn't great at last year. But I'm once again, game one, hoping it was just that lack of tackling, and he'll continue to grow and get better as the season goes on. I also do want to give UCLA some credit, especially Nico. I think Nico was one of the 5 toughest, I don't know if I'll say players, but I'll at least say quarterbacks that Utah, honestly, one of the 3 toughest quarterbacks that Utah is going to have to try and tackle this year with his size and strength. If we're looking at Utah's schedule, the only other quarterbacks other than Nico, because Nico's got good size, good speed, pretty good strength too. I don't know why Kyle called him Cam Newton, but outside of that, he's pretty athletic. So for other quarterbacks that Utah's going to face that they got to tackle better against, the next one will be maybe West Virginia has a quarterback that'll surprise us that way, but I don't see it. Arizona State, Sam Leavitt, he beat Utah with his legs a couple times last year. He can be athletic. I don't know if he'll run as much as Nico, but that'll be another one that's tough. The toughest running quarterback that I think Utah will play all year is actually Kansas State's Avery Johnson. He's incredibly athletic. He's shifty. He's tough to take down. So that's another one I look at. And then Jalen Daniels is another guy who will use his legs too, and Kansas is rolling so far. So we'll see about that. Some of the other quarterbacks we'll see on the schedule are mobile, but the biggest thing was Nico. So that's why I'm not sound the alarm of Utah missing tackles, because number one, it was game one. Number two, I know this defense will continue to improve and get better. There's some guys who will get back and get healthy. And also I think Nico's going to do that a lot this season to a lot of people. But Utah no doubt needs to get better before they see some of the other top rushing quarterbacks in the Big 12 conference. So that's just all something to keep in mind with this Utah defense. I think they will be fine, especially once you get a guy like Rabbit back. Unfortunately, we did get some news that Dallas Vakalahi is going to miss an extended period of time. He's out indefinitely for this Utah team. That is absolutely a blow. I like the way Carson Kaufusi looked in this game, but it's just a lot to ask a true freshman to step up as much as Utah's doing with him. They asked Dallas Vakalahi to do the same last year, and he was able to deliver. So hopefully Kaufusi can do the same. But right now, it'll probably be V. Mahi and Jonah Laea, and we'll see how that goes. I think Laea was fine from what I could tell. The Utah defense played well overall, but this was also not a very good offensive line. So how are they going to fare from a run stopping and pass rushing perspective against the better ones? That remains to be seen. We talked about it, though. According to Pro Football Focus, 2 of the highest graded defenders that Utah had in this game were John Henry Daly and Logan Fano. Just their ability to win one-on-one up front, the bevy of pass rush moves they used, all the different things they were doing. I was incredibly impressed with their ability, right? So Pro Football Focus listed the highest graded guys for Utah in this game. How about Jackson Benny being the 4th highest, by the way, 72. Shout out Jackson Benny, getting it done as a cornerback. and also just flying in there and making some stops and plays as well too. I'd be with showing off the tackling, catching passes too. The 5 highest graded guys for Utah, or 6 highest. They have Devin Dampier at an 81, Pro Football Focus did. Benny at 72. Logan Fano at 73. Smith Snowden as a wide receiver, 74. John Henry Daly at an 84. And, of course, Mr. Spencer Fano at an 87. So high grades, high praise for Utah, and those guys deserve to be up there. But love what Benny showed. I think that I want to see a lot more Rabbit Evans, as we kind of talked about, but love that Benny. There were a lot of transfers that this Utah team added. So the fact that Benny's getting a lot of snaps over a lot of those guys too is an incredibly encouraging sign for this Utah football team. So love what this Utah defense is showing right now. And, after game one, I can sit here and say maybe they won't be taking that step back that I thought they will. I'm not ready to completely just abandon that take after one game. It's hard not to overreact after the first game. I think you got to be very careful, right? To me, no Big 12 team looked more impressive, and we'll talk about this more in the third segment, than Utah did this past weekend. No Big 12 team looked more impressive. Does that necessarily mean they're the best team in the Big 12, though? I don't know if I'm ready to say that yet, because there's a lot of season to be played left, and there's also just a lot better teams that Utah is going to play than UCLA. I think UCLA would be a bottom 6 team in the Big 12. I don't think they'd be the worst team in the Big 12, but I think they'd be a bottom 6 team. So I'm not going to sit here and say that Utah, dominated a good Big 10 team, because I simply put don't think they did. So still want to see that defensive line, the defense continue to produce against better competition. And Deshaun Foster did have a quote where he said, like, hey, after watching the film, we're close. And I don't know if I would have said that if I was him, but I see what he's saying in terms of, we were blitzed, we were pressured here, and Nico just missed his throw and missed his play. If he makes that throw, that's a large game because of the blitz that Utah's bringing at us. And there were some times where there was a missed tackle or two that obviously led to a good thing. So I do see why he said that, of just like, hey, we weren't too far off from being more in this game. There were opportunities they could be. When you get blown out 43-10, you kind of are far off from being in the game, right? But yeah, still things that Utah needs to continue to work on and build on. Like we talked about, the tackling has got to be something this team cleans up. They need some guys to step up amidst the injuries, but love the way the linebacker group looked. Jonathan Hall looked explosive. Leavani Demooney laying the wood on that one big hit. Lander Barton looking back. Love the blitzes that Morgan Scalley was drawing up, the creativity, just bringing absolute chaos. Utah got 5 sacks at the end of the day, too. Logan Fano got 1. John Henry Daly got 2. I predicted that barely wrong. I was like, it's just a bummer. I said Logan Fano would get 2 and John Henry Daly would get 1. So I was just like, but either way, fired up this Utah team to get production and produce the way that they did in this game. But Utah looked absolutely tremendous. I think the defense will be fine in this game. The fact they only gave up 13 on the road is very encouraging. I don't expect them to give up over 20 in these next 2 games. I think they'll stay locked in against 2 not great teams. If they give up more than that against Cal Poly, it's because they took their foot off the gas. We'll preview that game more later this week. I don't see why Devin Dampier will be in the second half of that game. To me, you bring him in. It's a tune-up game. Allow that ramp-up period to get going, and then you're ready to play the Big 12 teams you have coming up outside of another tune-up against Wyoming, where I think Utah's starters will be out of that one by the end of the third quarter, is my prediction based on just what we saw from Wyoming against Akron as we sit here right now. But fired up for this Utah defense. Love the plays they were able to make in coverage. The coverage was sticky. The blitzes were impressive. The tackling had needed work, but is still encouraged by the linebacker. The defensive line really impressed me, and I feel like Utah, I like the rotation. Paul Fitzgerald, John Henry Daly, Cash Dillon, Lance Holtzclaw, all impressive. So liking what I'm seeing out of this Utah defense. But does it make Utah top 3 team in the Big 12? That's what we're going to discuss in one moment. Today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by our great friends at Game Time. College football is so back, and I couldn't be more excited. The tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands, there's just nothing like it. But let's be real. Actually getting tickets can feel more like a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. I pulled up Game Time in just a couple of taps. I saw amazing deals. I'm talking about your favorite college football games as low as $25 too. I mean, I love the zone deals as well. The pick the section that Game Time picks the seats, and then you save big. How about just that panoramic view as well, so you know exactly what view you're going to have before you're buying. So take the guesswork out of buying college tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege, all caps, no spaces, $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCollege, all caps, no spaces, for 20% off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. Today's show is also brought to you by our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. The NFL season is almost here, and FanDuel makes sure you're getting ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. It makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. The NFL season, I'm so excited to just have college football back, NFL back. We have Cowboys versus Eagles. I'm feeling very good about the Eagles right now in that game based on the circus that is the Dallas Cowboys at the moment. I'm excited to cheer on my Minnesota Vikings, who will be playing on Monday Night Football against the Bears. But whatever your team is, we got an awesome Sunday slate coming up in the NFL, so make sure you head over to FanDuel today. And there's another good week of college football, too, that'll deliver with Oklahoma versus Michigan being the best game. However you're leaning, however you're feeling, make sure you head over to FanDuel today. Are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet when you head over to FanDuel Sportsbook today. The Utah Utes had an amazing performance against UCLA up in Pasadena. It was remarkable. One of the best performances in the Big 12 of the weekend. And I do believe it was the most impressive performance from a Big 12 team in week one. I think if you're going overall, it's probably Iowa State's win over Kansas State. I think Kansas State's solid, more on them in a moment, but was just really impressed by the grit overseas over there. We saw from Rocco Beck, Matt Campbell, the Cyclones, Coach Campbell getting his 100th win at the time. But to me, like that was the most impressive performance a Big 12 teams had so far. Iowa State beating Kansas State, conference game 1, week 0, bad conditions, get the win there. Second most impressive performance, and the most impressive of week 1 has to be Utah beating UCLA in such dominant fashion. But who else are the teams that impress? And is Utah a top 3 team in this conference? Well, to bear the lead, I do think they are. I think Utah proved they are a top 3 team currently in the Big 12 conference right now. I think as of this moment, Iowa State, Utah, and ASU are the teams I'd have at the top. But if you want to say, I just want the 3 teams that look the most impressive so far in their games, then there's no doubt to me that's Iowa State, Utah, TCU. How about the Horned Frogs last night? I mean, my gosh, it was a 20-7 game at the half. UNC scores their first drive. TCU faltered once, then they scored their second, and just the second half, I mean, it was 21-7 in the third quarter, and it was so out of hand. It was 41-7 when this game was like really over. Like, what an impressive performance by TCU. That's not a great Carolina team. They got a long way to go, but still impressive with the whole world talking about Bill Belichick's team. It was a great atmosphere at Chapel Hill, and Chapel Bill got absolutely shredded by the Horned Frogs. So if you want to go who are the best 3 teams based on impressive performance, to me it's Utah, TCU, and Iowa State. And I don't see how you can't consider Utah a contender in this conference after their first game of the season. They look so impressive. And when you're also considering Utah a contender, you got to consider how shaky a lot of the other teams looked, right? I mean, just running down the rest of the conference, and not all these teams are going to be contenders, right? UCF, clearly not a contender, and they didn't look great against Jackson State, 117-10. Oklahoma State had an injury to Haas Haney. Zane Flores came in. He was fine. They won 27-7. I still need to see more than them, considering Utah won their game by more than a lot of these other teams did, playing G5 or less competition. You know, Houston, Stephen F. Austin, 27-0. Okay, that's fine. Connor Wegman, he threw 3 touchdown passes. I think that's a solid Cougars team, but I need to see a lot more from them against G5 opponents. Cincinnati lost to Nebraska. Kansas won both their games. They haven't played anyone worth a lot yet. Auburn beating Baylor. Baylor was probably the most disappointing team just from their offense delivered enough. I mean, scored 24 points, but the special teams and the defense really let Baylor down. And they got some bad calls, but still. Colorado got some work to do, although it's a good Georgia Tech team, so I'm not going to go crazy about that loss. Arizona State, Kenny Dillingham was not thrilled with how his team looked, how they performed. They only win 38-19 against Northern Arizona, and they actually got outscored in the second quarter by Northern Arizona had 6, ASU only 3. So that's with Sam Leavitt, some of those top guys playing. That's definitely disappointing. Biggest disappointment of Big 12 play last week against a bad team was Kansas State losing to North Dakota. It's a solid FCS team, but nowhere near one of the top 5 programs in the FCS level. So for Kansas State to barely squeak out a home win, 38-35 in that one, I know there's a lull sometimes coming back from Dublin, but that was a bad look, and I got major questions about this KSU team being a contender. How about Iowa State? They took care of business against South Dakota, 55-7. Matt Campbell's squad continues to roll. Texas Tech looked like Texas Tech against Arkansas Pine Bluff. They excelled. West Virginia, shout out to the Rich Rod era getting off to a strong start there. Then Arizona beat Hawaii. And of course, our good friends down in Provo won 69-0. How about 35-0 in the second quarter? Bear, 7 for 11, 97 yards, 3 touchdowns. LJ Martin had over 130 yards. How about shout out Carson Ryan, 2 catches, 47 yards, a touchdown too. So credit BYU too. But a lot of those teams won games against teams that aren't very good. Utah, TCU, and excuse me, I just blanked out. And Iowa State have all won games against teams that have looked decent, or like teams that I actually expect to be P4 teams or something. I shouldn't say decent because I don't think UCLA and North Carolina are going to be amazing this year. But I do think, hey, when you beat down P4 teams like that, that's impressive. So to me, there are clear top 3 teams in this conference. I do believe Utah should be considered among them right now. I hope to see Utah rank when the AP poll comes out here soon. We had to wait an extra day because we had that Monday game, see what Chapel Hill TCU would do. But really encouraged by the progress this Utah Utes team is making. I do believe they are one of the best teams in the Big 12 conference currently constructed. The best offensive line maybe in college football. Love the way those guys play. I had major questions coming into the season about the growth we'd see from Jaron Kump to Noah Tongai and Michael Mokafisi. They were outstanding, and we know the 2 offensive tackles were as well. So one of the best offensive lines in college football. Devin Dampier, nearly 300 yards of total offense and had 3 touchdowns. He was a just absolute baller in this game, especially. Then you look at the running back room, loaded. Wide receivers did just enough. A couple intriguing pass catching options. Also, those guys being elevated by lead offensive coordinator in Jason Beck. A defense with maybe the best pass rush tandem in the Big 12. A little early. Let's see against better offensive lines, but loved what I saw from that group. Defensive tackles that do a good job stopping the run. Physical linebackers. A secondary that's stingy. Yeah, Utah needs to continue to clean up the tackling, but I trust Morgan Scalley, Sharif Shaw, this defense to figure that out. There's a lot of talented players back there, and getting a couple key guys back from injuries will help that too. Utah's back. They're one of the best teams in the Big 12. Right now, I go Iowa State and Utah right there, 1 and 2. I may lean Utah, but that also probably should give Iowa State a little bit of the benefit of the doubt. I think it's totally fair having them actually went to the conference title game last year and returning a lot of that production versus Utah. Look good. Still have them as maybe the first, second best team. As I said, I go back and forth, but still want to continue to prove that they can do it against the best teams in even just the Big 12 and college football. But who knows if Iowa State proved that, because maybe Kansas State will not be one of the best teams in the Big 12 based on what they showed so far. Going to be fascinating to see and watch how it all plays out. But love this Utah team, and they are absolutely a top 3 team and a contender in the Big 12 conference as we stand here today. That's going to do it for Locked On Utes. What questions do you still have about this Utah football team? What do you want to see answered? What do you think of the performance? Drop your thoughts in the comments down below. Also, want to let you guys know about something big we have going on at the Locked On Podcast Network. College football fans, Locked On and Fire TV present College Football Kickoff, the ultimate college football weekly preview. Our good buddy Drake Toll of Locked On Big 12 leads the conversation along 2-time AP Coach of the Year Gary Patterson and former college star Jesse Hawley, and Locked On's local experts of college football preview only Locked On can do. Catch College Football Kickoff every Thursday throughout the season only on Fire TV. That's going to do it for today's Locked On Utes. If you're in the market for a second listen, check out Locked On College Football or Locked On Big 12, where I made an appearance with our good friend Drake Toll yesterday. Look forward to talking more Utah ball and really breaking down the Smith-Snowden as well as the rest of the defensive players' immersions on offense on tomorrow's Locked On Utes. Hope to see you then.